I want to thank President Bradley and the Board of Trustees and the faculty for welcoming me today. And congratulations to the amazing graduates and your presumably equally amazing family and friends. Vassar has reached out to me a few times over the past years to give this commencement address, and mercifully, I've been busy shooting or working abroad and had a good excuse not to accept this honor. I was unfortunately free this May and couldn't think of a convincing lie. So I accepted, and while you've all been writing your theses and studying for your final exams, I've been stressing out for the past 5 months over what to say to you today. I think a more effective way of doing this would be for all of you to lecture me, but this is the tradition, and we're here to honor tradition, so I will do my best. I'm here to tell you about the wonders of AI and also to express my controversial views on the conflict in the Middle East. Can you imagine? I said to a fellow Vassar grad from 1991 that I was shocked to discover that this year is our 25th college reunion. He said you might even be more shocked to learn it's our 35th college reunion. Time is weird. What you have achieved today is certainly an amazing accomplishment, and it's the end of 4 years of a kind of life where things feel like they count but kind of don't count. You're learning about the wonderful and complicated outside world and how to navigate your future while you live in this beautiful encased ecosystem called college. When I was where you are, I wondered if when I left Vassar, all this amazing knowledge and experience would translate to the rest of my life. How do I take all of this with me? How do I not be the guy who at age 40 says, oh yeah, I read Moby Dick back at Vassar, even though I've remembered none of it and probably didn't really read it when I was at Vassar. While there are many transitions in life, there are many periods. I'm going to do that part again. While there are many transitions in life, there aren't many periods quite like the one you're about to enter. Because now you'll have a summer that will feel kind of like other summers, but will also have an added anxiety of this is not like other summers, because come September, you won't have the cushion of Vassar to return to. You'll resent the incoming seniors who will assume a cockiness you all had merely a year ago. And if you don't go on to graduate school, time will take on a kind of drift without the barriers and markings of semesters and vacations. This is what we call the rest of your life. When I left college, I had a notion that there was a destination followed by an arrival, and there were proper paths to get there. And as I stand here 25 years, which is really 35 years, since I was sitting where you are, representing somebody of accomplishment who has arrived, who is here to tell you what it's like to get here, I realize that I'm still arriving just as you are today. We're always arriving, which is another way of saying we never arrive. And it took me years to realize what I imagine many of you here already know, that there's no one way to do anything. While there are many brilliant people who have gone before you, and you can and you should learn from them, it shouldn't blunt your own intuition and sense of yourself, and a sneaking suspicion that maybe you know a thing. You have more power than you think you have. I only know how I did it, all the mistakes I made and all my successes and humiliations, my triumphs and my failures. They won't be yours. But I'd like to share a humiliation and rejection that I got while I was attending Vassar. My senior year, I had written and staged a play here at Vassar with many of my friends, which I was quite proud of. It was a moment in my development where I felt I had found my voice as an artist. I'd written and directed the play and even acted in it when a cast member fell out. It was very well received. I had a profile in the miscellany news and everything. After our sold-out run, which I think was 3 performances, I felt like a pretty big deal. I'd walk through the college center and think, I own this town. And a classmate who was a stage manager on the production enthusiastically suggested I send it to a professional theatrical producer in Manhattan who was his family friend. I did just that. for I had arrived. A few months later in the summer, I received a package containing my return play and the letter, and I'd like to share the letter with you today. Dear Mr. Baumbach, this is a real letter that a real grown-up wrote to me. Dear Mr. Baumbach, at your request, we read your play Women and Thieves and are returning it to you at this time. Perhaps we are in error, but we presume that you might be a student or recent graduate of Vassar, and as a result had an opportunity to have this play presented there. Otherwise, frankly, it is difficult to understand why the play was ever produced. Since you did submit the play to us for criticism, we can only respond in a manner consistent with our professional standards. Simply stated, your play doesn't work. It fails on multiple levels. There is no dramatic content in the piece, no underlying credibility to the situation, strained dialogue, poorly conceived and underdeveloped characters, and a resolution which is inconsistent with the established behavior of the parties. The attempts at comic dialogue are forced and flat. It would appear that the writer is totally unfamiliar with the circumstances he is attempting to dramatize. These brief observations are not expressed with a desire to be cruel or to discourage you in any way from continuing to write plays. It is hoped that you learned a great deal from the production at Vassar and that you found a way to look at your play in an objective way. My advice to you is to forget about trying to further develop Women and Thieves, get to work on another play, and try to write from your own experience. Let the characters you create do the talking, not you. I hope we have been helpful. If this rebuff is enough to deter you from continuing writing, you would never have succeeded in that profession. If you can take away something positive from each rejection, you will be growing and inevitably improving your craft. Please extend our warm greetings to Brad Salmson, who is the stage manager. Sincerely, da-da-da. And so I'll leave you with this random man's vitriol as you all go out into the world and seek your fortunes. You believe that was the end of the speech? Yeah. When I read this letter at age 20, I was stunned. It was difficult to know what to do with this feedback, if we can call it feedback. And when I found it in a box again at age 45, I thought, well, I was probably oversensitive, unaccustomed to rejection. It could never be as bad as I remembered. Amazingly, it was kind of worse. I wish I could tell you that this is one of those stories where everything happens for a reason, and when a door closed, a window opened, but it wasn't. After I received this letter, I did not wander out into the street in a daze and get hit by a car, and the driver of that car didn't turn out to be my future wife, and the surgeon who fixed my leg did not turn out to be a famous producer who wanted to make all of my movies. None of that happened, and I wouldn't meet my future wife for another 10 years, and we'd get divorced. No, there was no unexpected rose that came from this sharp thorn. So why do I share this with you? What can we learn from this? Well, I would caution any playwrights in the audience to send their work to this specific producer. But when I looked him up a few years ago, I discovered that he'd passed away, which also put to rest any hopes I had of reaching out to him and inviting him to the Oscars. I met many rejections after this, but nothing was ever as mean-spirited as this one. Most people were quite encouraging, even when they were telling me that my work needed development or wasn't right for them. You're going to meet a lot of assholes. That's true. And you'll have to withstand rejection and insensitivity. To paraphrase Erykah Badu, I'm an artist. I'm sensitive about my shit. Being told my work fails on multiple levels feels bad. But if I didn't love doing what I do, and I loved it at Vassar as much as I love it now, shit heels like this would have had more effect on me and probably deterred me. But I remember even the day I got that letter in July of 1991 and took what felt like a punch in the gut after I showed it to my mom and we semi-successfully tried to laugh about it. I went up to my room and I started writing about the experience. Not to prove a point exactly, although maybe there was a little of that, but really because I liked writing and it made me feel better. You don't have to love your work. It's okay to just work. There are plenty of other things to love too. And doing something you love, whether it's work or play or friendship or marriage or parenting, does not mean you will be successful at it, but it will mean you're doing something you love. And doing something you love does not mean it won't be hard work. It will be hard work because you love it and you want it to be great and you want to be great at it. So you will work hard and it will be painful and you will fall short of your highest ideals, and I want you to forgive yourselves for all the mistakes you're going to make and all the goals you're not going to meet. Recently, I was sitting on a movie set talking with crew members about advice we would give to young people, and we all tossed out one cliche or another, and then the cat wrangler, that's the person who gets paid to get the cat to do what you want the cat to do on a movie, even though in truth, no cat will ever do what you want them to do. The cat wrangler said, I would tell them, look beside you, not in front of you. Until the car ride up here, I'd planned to take credit for that observation. But I decided to tell you the truth and credit the cat wrangler, because sometimes someone unexpected says something that really connects. A few years after my graduation and receipt of that letter, two of the producers on my first film, Kicking and Screaming, were my senior year housemates from TA 27, Jason and Jeremy. My friend Carlos, who was class of 1990, played a lead role. I wrote it with my childhood friend, Bo. The movie, its subject, and the experience was populated with my friends from Vassar and elsewhere. And that remains true to this day in my work and in my life. We didn't need that producer to tell us we were good. We told each other. Not that we were perfect. We were young and we made a million mistakes. I fell out with friends over that movie, and in one important instance, it took several years to repair. When I look out at all of you, I can't help but think of all of us in 1991 who sat there before you. I've lost touch with many of them. There are those whom I only see rarely. There are my very close friends, and there are the ones who aren't here anymore. I'm paraphrasing Holden Caulfield, but once I started talking about some of them, I started missing all of them. So, as you sit here, eager for the next adventure, sick of so-and-so, ready to be done with this relationship or that, going on about how incestuous it is in the Vassar bubble, know that these are your fellow travelers, your friends, your family, your professors, and over the years you will be there for each other, and they will be there for you, if you work at it and if you're lucky. You will collaborate together, give each other advice or solace. You will be to each other's weddings. Your kids will play together. As you get older, you'll swap stories of your ailments. You'll speak at memorials. There will be several stories in your life, just as there were here. Just as your freshman roommate may not have turned out to be your best friend. The first thing you do after graduation may have nothing to do with what you'll be doing in 5 or 10 years. Our 20s is a surprisingly challenging decade. You're young, but you don't feel young. You've got all the time in the world, and yet you're in a rush. And if you're like me and you like to control things and anticipate the outcome, it's a shit show. It's okay not to be the person you thought you'd be. And if you are the person you thought you'd be, that will be its own challenge too. All of it will lead you somewhere, and when you turn 30, we'll all regroup here and I'll talk to you again. I think that's in my contract. The rejection is never the final word. Neither is the triumph. But today is an unequivocal triumph for all of you. When I stood here by Sunset Lake, each of you marching past your professors and me in procession, I realized I had nothing to worry about these past months, and I was glad I didn't lie and that I was available to give this commencement address. Not because I had any particular wisdom to share, but because I got to be here with all of you as you began that amazing walk into the rest of your life. Thank you.